Hi everyone, Squintina here, and today we will be talking about the Blue Mage 70 tank setup. There will be a separate video explaining your various options for how to quickly switch to the healer and DPS setups. I will warn you though, the tanking set has a lot of things that could be considered optional, and therefore many ways to adapt it. Because of this, I won't have a swap section directly. I will simply explain what is useful, what is not, and present my default tanking setup. As I'm sure you can probably guess, first we need to become a tank, and you do so via number 77, Ethereal Mimicry. You will cast this on a tank, and that will give you the tank mimicry status. Do note you do need to cast this on an actual tank. If you cast it on a blue mage who happens to have a tank mimicry, you will still end up with a DPS mimicry. The tank mimicry will increase your defense and magic defense, and allow you to upgrade certain actions. So, let's put on some actions that can help you mitigate those tank busters and manage that aggro. First off, we're going to need that number 30, Mighty Guard. You will deal 40% less damage, but you will also take 40% less damage, while generating more aggro. This is a stance you can turn on or off. Turning it on does require a cast, but turning it off does not. This can be useful for switching from main tank to off tank. Next, we have our beloved number 29, Diamondback. Up until the level 70 update, this was the only self-mitigation that blue mage tanks had. Thankfully, you have more options now, but you will still need Diamondback. This reduces damage by 90% and prevents knockbacks and draw-ins. Diamondback costs a huge amount of MP, so we will have a section about MP management later. Next up is number 75, Devour. A slightly stronger attack than what you will be bringing as your basic attack, but that does not matter. The main reason for you to use this, as a tank, is that it will provide you 70 seconds of having more max HP, and it will restore some HP based on damage dealt. Then we've got number 95, Dragon Force, a defensive cooldown with an awesome name. This will reduce your own damage by 40%. Do note that the cooldown is based off of your spell speed. Tanks and healer blue mages are recommended to have a lot of spell speed in order to have shorter cast times and shorter recasts for their powerful role utilities. Dragon Force does share a cooldown with two other abilities, but you will not be bringing those. If you're curious, they are Angel Snack, which is meant for a healer blue mage, and Matra Magic, which is meant for a DPS blue mage. Next up, we have number 89, Chelonian Gate, your new best friend. The tooltip is really long. First, you get a 20% damage reduction for 10 seconds, as long as you don't move or attack. It will cancel your auto attack, so you don't have to worry about that. And yes, you can move your camera as long as you're not changing where you face. People on legacy controls do not have to worry about the camera, but people on standard may want to be careful about which mouse click they do. The cooldown is relatively short, starting at only 30 seconds, and it is affected by your spell speed, so you will be able to use this for a lot more tank busters. You can combine this with Dragon Force as long as Dragon Force is done first. Anyway, in addition to the reduction, if you take enough damage to equal 30% of your HP, the action will change. This new action will deal 1000 potency damage to nearby targets within 10 yalms. So basically, you mitigate your tank buster first, and then you do a super strong attack. Chelonian Gate shares a cooldown with Rose of Destruction, so you will not be bringing that. Your other best friend is number 28, Bad Breath. It's great in dungeons for all of the effects, and it's great in raid because of the damage dealt reduction. It can also be used as an interrupt, so you don't need to bring Flying Sardine. And if the poison works, you get some extra damage. It's just a great all-around spell for tanks. That does cover all of the defensives, but we need a bit more about aggro, and that's where number 13, White Wind, comes in. White Wind will heal nearby party members by your own HP, and it is also 15 yalms. This makes it a fantastic aggro generation tool, especially for dungeon tanking. You know, I've done actually a few dungeons as a tank, and I found it much easier when trying to just grab up adds to walk, use up White Wind, get them back up, and then kill them. Much easier than using it to look. For raid tanking, unless you are the one handling a big heal back to full, you don't really need White Wind for aggro management, especially since White Wind costs a huge amount of MP, and in raid tanking, you might be spending a lot of your MP on Diamondback, so it's not as useful there. Additionally, you might want number 62, Frog's Legs. Technically speaking, you should not need this. Your first tank should be using Mighty Guard to establish aggro through just attacking, and then your off tank should turn on Mighty Guard a little after, and be making sure to stay in the number 2 aggro spot. This way, if the main tank dies, you should not need Frog's Legs. Plus, you can do tank swaps by manipulating Mighty Guard. However, just because you can do all of that, doesn't mean it's pleasant, or that you'll feel comfortable doing it. Personally, I would rather have Frog's Legs, and I will be including it as part of my setup. I'm just mentioning that you don't completely need it, because I have seen some other Blue Mage tanking setups without it. You also don't need number 61, Avail. This is the tank shirk. If you are doing a swap, you can have the main tank turn off Mighty Guard, and the off tank can turn on and use Frog's Legs, and then establish aggro. Using Avail is very much not necessary to swap, and I would say even more so than Frog's Legs, so I will not be including that one as part of my set. But I am mentioning it since it is a tanking utility that other people might want. There is also a special section here, tanking utilities only if you are leveling or still building up your spell guide. You do not need number 32, Toad Oil. This increases your evasion, and a lot of people include it. This will do very little difference, and with all the new mitigation actions, it's just not necessary. The only time you really want to have Toad Oil is if you don't have the better mitigation tools. So if you're still working on collecting your Blue Mage spells, and you need to tank a normal trial or dungeon, then sure, go ahead, bring it. Otherwise, don't. The same applies to number 24, Flying Sardine. Yes, it is instant, and as an interrupt that's pretty awesome. But once you get better at tanking, and especially once you get your spell speed, a bit better, you should be able to do any interrupts you need through Bad Breath and get more utility out of that. Alright, so aggro and defensives are done, let's look at other utilities. First, let's talk about number 80, J-Kick. This does damage, while also bringing some gap-closing utility, and that's where it really matters. Positioning is very important for tanking, so I consider this more of a utility than damage. We've also got our number 72, Angel Whisper. This is your Vaz. Every single Blue Mage should be bringing their Vaz, since the huge cooldown means you cannot ask your healers to just do it all over and over and over. But next we need MP. Number 17, Blood Drain, will restore some MP, and so will number 60, Magic Hammer. Do you know that Magic Hammer also reduces enemy intelligence and mind, which can help with raid wides and magical tank busters? Blood Drain should be considered a necessity, while Magic Hammer is a bit more optional. The next utility we'll be bringing will be either Off Guard, number 20, or number 43, Peculiar Light. Both of these do a 5% damage vulnerability on your enemy, and Off Guard is ranged, single target, while Peculiar Light is melee and multi-target. Most importantly, they can stack, but they share a cooldown. As such, you should coordinate with your party members such that 4 people have Off Guard and 4 people have Peculiar Light. For non-static content or dungeons, just pick whichever you like best and try your best. The last utility is number 76, Condensed Libra. This is usually done by tanks, and it allows certain aspects to do more damage if they follow one of 3 aspect groups, which are Physical, Umbral, and Astral. You can check the tooltip for exactly which elements are for what. It is possible your group might ask a healer to do it, but tanks are more common. However, more DPS are foregoing the Libra Trinity because of the 24 action limit. I know I did in my DPS setup, though it can be adjusted to have it, and while this buff is nice, it's not worth losing some of the other more powerful actions. That being said, even if your DPS are not doing the Trinity, you might still want to bring this anyway, and try to get a physical for when they do their finisher for Final Sting. Generally speaking, since White Wind is more useful for dungeon tanking, and Libra is more useful for raid or extreme trial party damage, I would consider them to be a swap group, and have either White Wind or Libra on. Okay, Squint, can we stop talking about utility and start talking about some damage? Yes. So, tanks do have a lot of utility taking up those precious 24 slots, especially if you're bringing some of the extra utilities that you don't fully need, like Avail and Toad Oil. The more utility you bring, the less damage you can do. As such, you should try to fill out the rest of your slots based on what you have available. As a tank, you won't really have a rotation. Your main focus is staying alive through tank busters and doing damage in between according to your cooldowns. First, you will need a basic spammable attack. For this, I recommend number 63, Sonic Boom. It's long range, for when you're doing mechanics, and 210 potency is only 10 potency below some of the other spammable attacks, but it does have a longer weaving window. This weaving window will be useful for using some of the following attacks. First, there is number 104, Night Bloom, a 400 potency ability with a powerful bleed that lasts 1 minute. The overall is 1900 potency. Then we have number 78, Supernaka, a 4-part attack that does 100 more potency each time. So it does 200, 300, 400, and 500 potency, for a total of 1400 potency. As such, try to only use it when you have all 4 stats. And then we have number 103, Phantom Flurry. This is a 2-part attack. The first part is only 200 potency, but as long as you don't move your character or your camera, you can use it again for a 600 potency attack that starts another GCD weaving window. Now let's go back to our spells rather than abilities, and we have number 84, Cold Fog. This activates a buff for 5 seconds. If you get hurt during this buff, it will change to White Death for 15 seconds. This will give you an instant spell of 400 potency that you can use repeatedly during those 15 seconds. But you do have to get hurt. If you are main tanking, this should be very easy. If you are off tanking, you should still know when an AoE or targeted attack is coming, and so it should not be much of an issue to learn to use this effectively. Next up, we have number 9, Song of Torment. This is a bleed as well. This bleed does not stack with Night Bloom. As such, you should be using Night Bloom first, and then you would be using Song of Torment once Night Bloom's bleed wears off, but you are still waiting for it to come back on cooldown. You might be wondering what happened to number 12, Bristle, which is commonly used with Song of Torment. Not enough space for it, and the loss isn't enough to prioritize it. If you can somehow manage to bring it, sure, but you really don't have to. What about number 27, The Look? Another old Blue Mage tanking staple that is now being put aside. This is a spammable 220 potency attack that also has more enmity generation. In 8-man content, you should be able to keep up your aggro even as an off-tank by using Mighty Guard and doing your regular attacks. And in dungeons, you have White Wind. The Look should not be necessary, but some players might feel better having it. You can choose to get rid of Sonic Boom and then just clip your weaves a little, or you can find a way to make space for it. You can also have number 93, Blaze, or any other 220 potency long-range spell that does not require you having to manually target or manually face yourself and does not interfere with your party members in any way. Whether you decide to include The Look or Blaze, these should be considered replacements for Sonic Boom, and just accept that you will clip your GCD when you use an ability. As for the rest of the slots, you can either bring, if you can make space for it, number 12, Bristle, if you really want to make that Song of Torment combo more powerful, or add number 64, Whistle, and number 8, Final Sting for that Final Sting combo. If you have space for number 91, Basic Instinct, you can also include that. People tend to think of it as a solo thing, but if you read the description, it also works if you're in a party and everybody else is dead. So if you're going to be, the last one alive, which at the tank, especially if you're the main tank you might be, you are going to have a slightly stronger Final Sting. Just make sure you actually are the only person left. In addition, you can also try to see if you can fit the Whistle, Tingle, and Triple Trident combo, which are number 64, 81, and 82. And lastly, if you can manage to fit them, number 47, Shock Strike, and number 44, Feather Rain, both of which are good at GCD damage. Alright, that is the end of this video. It is time to show off my controller setup, as well as some of the macros I use. I will be doing a video specifically on how to manage your Blue Mage swap macros. Anyway, let me know if you have any questions about this setup, or about Blue Mage in general. Also, if you want to hit that like button, I swear it's not a self-destruct button. The subscribe button might be though. No promises. Anyway, I will see you all for the next time. Bye bye!